Good morning, good morning, good morning. I am your host, Sharifah Hardy, and this is our episode of As Sharifah Videocast and Podcast. I have a very special guest for you today, someone who has become a dear friend. You've seen her on the Roundtable Talk Show, and we haven't had the opportunity to dive too far into what she does, but we're going to introduce Miss Minessa. Good morning, Minessa. How are you?
Hi, Sharifah. I am so excited to see you today, and I am sorry I was a tad late.
It's
We had
okay. Nobody noticed. We didn't notice at all. We're ready to go. I'm
great.
excited to have you here to talk a little bit about what you do. You have fibromyalgia, chronic migraines, IBS, PTSD, depression, and anxiety. So you need to run a business using this framework. And most systems aren't designed with people like you and mine, which makes it harder to run a business. So by working with you, people will learn a new approach for running a business with chronic illness that accommodates your particular framework without the guilt and self-judgment. Is that correct?
That is correct.
How long you been doing this?
Just a couple of years. I think I started after I left direct sales in 2017, 18 is when I really started to be intentional about it. But I think my whole, like, since my mom died, I wanted to help in this way. It's one of those things where I learned the lesson about how important it is to help others when I was 26, but it actually took me another 10, 12 years before I figured out how I actually could do it. Like before that, it was just like I knew I wanted to do something, but I had no idea what it was. So I felt very lost before that.
Well, you were lost, but now you're found.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to ask, because you already know me by now, I get easily distracted. Is that Will Smith for me? Like, could
Total. Oh my God. Don't you just love this man? You know what?
Yes,
It's for both of us because I get to see him. I get to see, it's like that way I get to look at him. You get to look at him. No one looks at me. They just look at these men behind me.
Yes, because he wasn't there before. We were looking at Jason. I'm like, oh, look, now we have Will. Look, there's
Will.
new things to distract me.
I try to change it up.
I love that picture, though. It's very artistic. Where'd you get that one from?
So this is actually his biography. It's the cover of his biography.
Okay, that
Have
he's been
you had
doing
a
his
chance to
tour with.
read it yet?
No, I have to
On
read it.
so it's available on audiobook too. My husband does a lot of audiobooks. So for so many books, I don't even know what the covers look like because I just get the audiobook and listen. I had been reading I've been reading so many interviews with him about just the journey that he went on during COVID. And I was so blown away by his level of self-awareness and the way he talked about the journey he went on that
Mhm.
I got his book. And I'll be honest, I think every business owner needs to read this book. It's absolutely brilliant in how he talks about the same kinds of things that we do, but he's the biggest movie star in the world, right?
Right.
And it really goes to show, like, I never thought I'd say this, but his book, very relatable, very, very relatable.
He's always been relatable, but one of the things I think you're telling on yourself, Minessa, is it seems to me that you are a romantic at heart because Jason has his love story, this incredible love story where he sees a girl and he just has to have her. And
Yep.
then you have Will Smith, who is doing a tour opening up about his life and his relationship and his life and his romance with Jada.
Oh,
Because in Hollywood, one of the whispers that goes around and people talk about is that Jada and Will have this open
mhm.
relationship. One of the things that he's been talking about during his tour about this book is that it's not just about sex. It's just about connecting to someone. So these both are very romantic people who are in love with the women in their lives.
You hit the nail right on the head. And you know what I love what you said is it's not just about sex.
Right.
It's about more than that. And I think I am such a romantic. My whole life I've been a romantic.
You
So
can tell.
you hit the nail right on the head. I got nothing other than you're absolutely right. What about you? Are you a romantic?
I'm a hopeless romantic, and we are so far off track. But before this interview, I was like, Minessa and I, this is not even a talk show. This is not even an interview. This we just go chat and people get to listen to what we're talking about. But I am a hopeless romantic to the point where I'm like, if it's not this magical experience, I'm like, I don't know if I want to have it. I want the Jason story. I want the Will Smith. I want that happily ever after.
Oh gosh, yeah. I want that feeling like, oh, this is the love. And you're like,
Yes.
yes.
Yes,
Yeah, oh,
yes.
absolutely.
That's wonderful. Okay, I'm gonna try to be professional and bring it back to work. But again, you put
Oh,
those things
professional,
there
special.
so that I would be distracted and I'll see a beautiful men and I'm like, what you got going back there? But you help people. Let me focus on work. Let me do my job. You
You got
because
it.
you've been on, okay, before I even go into that, but you've been on the Roundtable Talk Show and you're going to be on the show was it every other Friday?
It's actually, I meant to do every other Friday, but I kind of snuck in a couple of continuous Fridays in there, just, by
Okay.
accident on purpose.
Okay, no, I loved it because we had the first show and that was wonderful. And then you came back for the second episode. And what I noticed is the first episode you talked and it was perfect, not to complain. But the second episode, you were just sitting there, just watching the show like it was on television. And I found that so interesting.
There was, I like to, I used, I've recently realized that I'm not the world's best listener.
Okay.
And it bothers me, and it's bothered me a lot because I like to connect with people and I like to listen. I just realized that I needed to work harder at it and develop it as a skill. And I had that very day, or it was day 2, I think, of me doing my meditative practices on how to be a more active listener and be better at it. And so on that day, I was doing that. And then you had a guest who was talking about, oh my God, I can't remember what he was talking about, but semiotics and like how we behave and conversation and things like that. And I found what he was saying to be really fascinating. And I was trying to get because when I listen to your podcast, when I listen to the roundtable, what's really amazing is you can pull out a few threads of things that then you can take later and explore. And I had a few things in there that I was like, oh my God, I know nothing. What he's talking about in that granular level, I want to learn more about it. So I was kind of listening. And then at one point I thought, oh my God, my RBF is awful. Like I need to like smile better.
No, it was fine. I just noticed the hand. You were just intent, and I
That
was
was
just
really intense.
so. But
He
that
was
makes me
just,
feel good.
it was, oh my God, your shows are brilliant. After listening to it once, I can't shut up about it. I'm like, everyone who I meet, everyone who I know that's a business owner, I tell them, dude, just go to Ask Sharifah. Like just by going to that show, you will take your business to a next level. Like absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you. No, it's wonderful feedback that I get because I love hosting the Roundtable Talk Show, but I get to learn. You taught me about putting things in the background so that what did you call it? Stop the scroll.
Mm-hmm. To
Stop.
stop the scroll, you want to so one of the things that we talked about and I think our first one, you asked me if that was Jason Momoa, and it is. And somebody gave him to me years ago as a cutout, and I watch a lot of Stargate Atlantis, and I love Stargate Atlantis, like Jason Momoa. So if people see him behind me and there's somebody who likes Jason Momoa, they're more likely to stop the scroll and be like, is that Jason Momoa? So one of the things actually that I train on is how to make it easier for you to get people's attention on social media. So you don't have to fight social, because most business owners feel like they're fighting the algorithm to try to get the reach and get the attention and that's a lot of emotional work. It's a lot of pressure, and it's a lot of rejection when you don't get the results that you're looking for, because oftentimes you don't get what you're looking for if you're constantly chasing me like, look at me.
Right.
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 And so for something like this, it's more of a passive thing where, like you noticed it, you noticed Will Smith, you'll notice these things and ask the question. And then what's even better is that, let's say you and I are not as friends, like you and I are friends, like we know each other, but let's say we didn't know each other and it's super awkward. It gives you something to talk about, so it's like, if you're in a Zoom meeting, you can ask the question, oh, is that Will Smith? And then the conversation will lead itself.
I like that. So let me ask you a question. I was on a Zoom yesterday, and someone had expressed this opinion that they were finding it difficult to what's the word that she put, that they were finding it difficult to create relationships and then to turn the relationships from this relationship that they created into sales. And she was saying that she was struggling with this and she didn't really understand social media. And so I was confused because, and I love to hear your take on this, Minessa, is I said, because for me, and this is just for me, and I can't, tell anybody else what to do. I'm just a business consultant who's been around for 25 years.
Just
you know what I mean? Just that, but I've never try to go out and focus on building relationships just to get clients. I focus on sharing who I am and sharing what I do and letting people know that I have a service, and then they can become clients. So what I was expressing to her was that, to me, and just again me, it felt inauthentic to say, okay, well, let me build a relationship with Minessa. Let's be friends, let's talk, let's chat. And then, oh, by the way, I sell trucks.
Right.
It just seems like if you sell trucks, just come out and say, this is what I do, and let people know what you do, as opposed to trying to build a certain relationship in order to get business.
Mhm.
But I love to hear your thoughts on that.
I am so with you. I think there's nothing more there's nothing much more of a turn off than somebody who's like, there's an Urdu saying, ek haath le, ek haath de, which means you give with one hand, you take with the other. And
Okay.
it's sort of like this idea that I'm only giving with this one hand so I can take with the other hand, right? So nobody wants to be a part of that transactional relationship if
Right.
they think, if you're pretending to want to be like a friend or a relationship type
Right.
thing, right? It's because it feels icky. So I'm absolutely with you. But at the same time, you do have to build relationships with people on social media, right? To be able to grow. And I
Mhm.
think that there are people like you who, through your years of experience, obviously you've done a lot of work. And you've also learned in addition to all of the work that you've done, you also have a very dynamic and engaging personality to
Mhm.
where, you're magnetic. People are drawn to you. I'm drawn to you. Um, and so for a my phone is thinking. And so for a lot of business owners, when they first start their businesses, they don't actually know how to sell. So they just say buy, buy, buy. And then they're like, oh, wait, I'm supposed to be building relationships first, but they don't really understand what the connection between relationship and selling is. And so it's very much, I'm building a relationship and then I'm going to sell to you. But
Right.
what it really is, what's really happening is that you and I, like if I suggested something to you, say, hey, listen, you really, really want to try, if you have a dog, you really want to try the spot bot. It's going to change your life. You just put it down over the spot and it just sucks everything up and cleans it up and you'll never have to clean it up again. It's going to be amazing. If you don't know me at all, you're not really necessarily going to trust or believe me in that case, right? And so in order for you, but the spot bot's going to help you. I
Right.
promise you, it's going to help you. And so, if I come at it from a place of service, like you were saying earlier, I'm sharing what I'm doing. I have this service. You're not, and you're coming at it from the space of I am helping other people, then you're not actually selling as much as you're filling a need. And so I
Right.
think the issue that exists with the person you were talking to is that she needs to actually pull back further. This is a problem that comes before social media. It's the problem in approach and perspective, which is I am sharing what I have because I know it's going to make your life better. And I am going to get to know you because that's only going to help me help you better, right? The
Right.
more I know you, the more I can help you. That is an approach as opposed to I need to sell and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to sell. Oh, you know what? I'll engage. It's
Right.
where you're starting from. That's the problem. I think that's really where that comes from.
And I also think it goes back to what you were saying, practicing that act of listening. You consider it a magnetic personality, but I think I'm somebody who is truly interested in other people. I talk about, I always wanted to be that kind of person who for all their life knew what they wanted to be. Like you meet those people, "Oh, I always knew I wanted to be a doctor. I just knew when I was in the third grade I was going to be and I'm like, I never had that. I have a cousin in right now in Columbus, Ohio, who is a news reporter. He's a journalist for CBS News, or one of them, the Channel 4, Channel 7. Wonderful. I'm so proud of him, Carrie, by the way.
That's amazing.
Just because I don't know his station, I'm still proud of him. But when he was 9 years old, he'd walk around the house with a spoon and interview people. So, like, seriously, this is a true story. He would interview them. So everyone knew, he knew that that's what he wanted to be. And I was like, I want that. I want that for myself. But I was always a talker. I was always inquisitive. I always just naturally asked questions, to the chagrin of my mother, who was like, if you don't talking, because I'd be like, Mom, why is that lady hair blue? Her hair's not supposed to be blue, Mom. Is it, lady? Why? Like that? My mom's like always so embarrassed. You know? So it's not just the personality, it's that I listen to people, I ask questions, and so often people never have an opportunity to talk about what's on their mind.
You were the one who inspired me actually after being on your the roundtables the first time, you're such a good listener, and I was blown away by that skill, and the way you made me feel. Like uh, I felt very safe, and I felt very heard. And I thought that's a gift. Like that's a huge gift you gave me. Thank you enormously for that. But then I was like, I want to do that for other people. And even though I've been thinking about being a better listener for a while, I actually took the steps to learn because you pushed me in that direction, because I was like, I want to make other people feel the way you make me feel.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. This guy. But it is a lot of it just came from doing the show for so many years. And then there's a weird aspect of it that came from not wanting to do too much work, right? So no, seriously, I'm being honest. This is our therapy session. You and I, Minessa, we're in therapy. But when I first started doing my talk show, Ask Sharifah Radio, back in 2009, it was because so many people had questions for me that I didn't want to take all day to answer a million different questions.
Yeah.
I'm going to answer those questions all at one time. And so what happened was people would contact me and they say, well, I'm going to be on your show tomorrow. Are we going to do a pre-show call or pre-show, talk prior to the interview? And I would always say no, because your customers don't have a pre-show conversation prior to buying your products or your services. You don't talk to your customer and explain to them what you do before they go into your store. Like, can you imagine Target calling? I'm Target. I just want you to know nobody does that. You go to the store and you get the information. And so I never knew anything about my guests prior to them coming on the show, because I wanted that natural curiosity. And so if I'm naturally curious, I don't fake my questions, So if I'm naturally curious about something, then I have to sit and wait for them to give me an answer and give me a response. And I always say most people never get asked their opinion at all. So if you truly, authentically want to know what someone's opinion is, you have to sit back and listen. Like, I'm dying to learn more about what the process was like for you to go out into business, to go out and tell people, I have these issues. These are the things I suffer with, and what that was like for you.
It was scary because I have always been of this belief that I thought that there was some, like, so when I used to work at a hospital. When I worked at the hospital, there was a certain way you were expected to present yourself. You needed to look professional, no tattoos showing, no weird colored hair, like all of that. It always bothered me because I'm really good at my job. The fact that I have a tattoo is not relevant to whether or not I can manage money. Like I can do that with or without one, right? But it was no jeans. It was a big deal. And I didn't know why it was such a big deal to other people, how I looked or how I dressed. And it made me mad. Like, and I was younger and I was still a little adolescent. I would say I didn't really graduate from adolescence till I was 36. So I was still adolescent at that point. And I was just petulant about it. But over the course of the last 4 or 5 years, I really started to get an acute awareness. So my mom died at 52 and I'm 44. So I'm like, we're getting closer, right? And so when you lose a parent, you start to see your life as like 8 years, 7 years,
I understand.
I realized I don't want to pretend to be. I felt like I was just pretending. I was trying so hard to just pretend and just pretend like I was okay, like I wasn't feeling sick, and then I started to work with other business owners and I still probably wouldn't have said anything, except I started to work with other women, and I wasn't a coach yet. I was just working with them, and I saw how prevalent this is. Like, there are so many chronically ill women in the country, and that are not listened to. They have trouble running their businesses, and most of the time, the things that you're trained on are these ideas of work hard. Like you said, you wanted to work less, dude. You and I, same mindset. I want to make more money with less work. I don't want to be like, oh, look at me, I work 24 hours. Dude, no, why are you proud of that?
Right.
Tell me you only worked 1 hour, which I think that day, as you said that, I was like,
Round Table Talk Show. That's the extent.
It was amazing. I started sharing, not for me, but because I realized that there weren't that many. This was 5 or 6 years ago, where not that many people were talking. Over the last 4 years, it's become very, very vocal. Nobody was really talking about these kinds of things back then. And so I was like, everyone feels alone right now, but none of us are. Right. And somebody has to be brave enough to get up and say, look, this is my framework. And now I'll be honest, I didn't start with this is my framework. I started with sharing one thing, which was my chronic migraines. Then it was anxiety. And then I started to see what other people who were so open about their mental health struggles. I've always been very open about that. I started to see how it impacted other people, and that empowered me and emboldened me. And over time, I built this huge community of chronically ill women, business owners who are unable to work regular day jobs. So they need this business. It has to work because they don't have any other place to go and they don't have anything else to do. And they need a different way of running their business. What's really great is that what I figured out from doing this is that most people are doing way too much for their businesses. You can actually get rid of like 50% of what you're doing in your business without any problem, and you won't see any loss of sales. So many people are just doing too much junk. And so one of the things that I do first is eliminate the junk. Just let's get rid of all of your junk, because believe me, you have a lot of it.
Right. But I'm going to talk about that because I don't know if I qualify to be in your group or not, because I haven't been diagnosed with anything, but I self-diagnose myself all the time because I'm just so okay and happy with myself and my issues, in that I always say, I can't work under these conditions. And people will be like, okay, how can you just decide you can't work? I can't work under these conditions. I can only work under certain conditions. Like, I need my job to start at 9 a.m., be off at 10 a.m., only work 2 days a week. Like, I come up with all these things because I'm not that person who wants to do, like you said, all that junk and all that work. But now, as an entrepreneur, one of the things that I talk about is so often people feed into this belief that if you are an entrepreneur, you have to work 24 hours a day. You have to work 7 days a week. You have to have a million emails. You have to have 12 Zooms on your calendar. You have to have all these things. And I'm like, I don't do any of that. I'm like, first of all, I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm a business owner, and businesses have hours. My business hours are 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. And it's so interesting that people will call me and they will say, Sharifah, let's meet on Saturday. No, I don't do meetings on Saturday. Like, I'm Saturday. Right. It's Saturday, especially on Sundays. And like, let's do a Zoom. No, okay, well, on Monday morning at about 10 a.m., we can do a Zoom. But I push back a lot because I understand that I am a business owner and this is the way a business operates. I would love to hear your thoughts, Minessa.
Oh, dude, I'm so glad you brought that up, because you, like, what you're describing is the boundaries that we all need to set around our business. I love that so much, because your business and life are both they're the same thing. You're alive and you have a business. So the work-life balance thing, I don't really believe in that. What I believe in is that you integrate your business into the life that you design for yourself in your head. I think most people, they just let life happen. It's like, oh, there's a meeting on my calendar, and then I'm going to do this, and then and you just do the things. There's no intention behind it that says, I'm going to sit down and you were so intentional just now when you said, I want to work 1 hour. I want to work from 9 to 10. You know what you want. And so now you're able to construct your life around it. But most
because I already know, not to cut you off, because I already know this is the end result, which is probably a year or 2 years away. Like, I'm going to buy an island in the Maldives. Like, that's the goal.
Yes.
And so what happens is when they start adding all this stuff to my schedule, I imagine myself in the Maldives reaching for my margarita going, okay, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to. So I have to do that now in order to get to that phase.
That's exactly, so that's what I dream of as well. I dream about, I dreamt about this house, and now we have this house. You can't tell because I'm sitting in the dungeon. We call it the dungeon because it's the darkest room in the house. The rest of the house is on a cliff on the ocean. And I got that for specifically because that's what I want. I want to be like, I don't want to do this. And like you said, you have to make those decisions. We think that we'll make those decisions later, but as you just said, you have to make those decisions now. But I would be curious to know, because you mentioned that, like, you have really strong and firm boundaries, and we've talked about this before a little bit about your boundaries, and because you know what you want. But I'm curious, when you were starting out your business, or because you've been doing this for a while, but was there a point at which you did not understand that that it didn't matter how many the hours you worked were not what was important? It was something else. Did you ever do the working all the time thing?
Yes, I did the working all the time thing, and I don't know how long I did it for. But it's something, a realization, it's like a eureka moment, like an epiphany, like, oh my God. But what I realized is that I was allowing people and clients to push me. And I was allowing them to push me from what? Fear. I was afraid that I would lose the money. I was afraid that I wouldn't have enough money. I was afraid that my customers, my clients would leave me. And what I realized is by setting boundaries that customers didn't go anywhere, right? Because one of my favorite things to do is to let people know. And I don't always do it up front, but if people start to push me, I let them know, or sometimes on the autoresponders that please allow up to 24 hours for a response, because every business does that. Even though you might get an immediate response, we're a business, come on now. Like we have 24 hours to respond. So it wasn't one big thing, but once you set those boundaries, your life is so much better and you don't allow people to push you. What was it for you? How did you come to that realization?
I think it was very similar to like what you were saying, that epiphany where I realized that I was letting other people guide my entire life.
Yes.
Where somebody wants to talk to you, sure. If somebody needs a meeting, sure. And you just say yes to everything because you're afraid. And it was the same reason too. I was afraid of losing them. I was afraid that nobody else would come. And I think that for me, and this was a lot of hard internal work, therapy, dude, so much therapy for this, was recognizing that it's okay. The money will come. I'm not doing this for the money. I'm doing this for the impact and for the life that I want to live, and the money will come. And it required a significant amount of surrender and belief in what I'm doing. And I think that that might be the hard part. I think for a lot of business owners, especially my audience, tends to have low self-esteem. And so it's hard to believe in yourself, right? Because do you think that it takes a belief in yourself to put those boundaries up?
I believe it takes a belief, but I also believe that one of the things that I didn't mention that happened with me is I began to become very exhausted. I was exhausted because I was trying to please all of the people all of the time, as opposed to just setting boundaries that says, you know what, I'll get to that on Monday morning at 9 o'clock or 11 o'clock. I will take care of it. I'm not saying no, I'm just saying not now.
Yeah.
And so once I did that, I was able to rest. I was able to sleep. And it's a lot of guilt sometimes. I talk about this on my show because I remember one day I had, oh my God, Minessa, we would have a good time hanging out. But I had watched Netflix all day, all day. Like I had a conversation with myself in my head. You know how we do. So I said, Sharifah, you can't just lay here all day and watch Netflix. And then Sharifah said to me, dude, it's Saturday. You know what I mean? So it was like realization that it's okay. It's okay for me to relax. It's okay for me to enjoy life, because if you're not enjoying life, what are you doing all of this for? That's number one. But number two, you will tire yourself out. You don't get any rest. You don't get to renew your spirit. You don't get to find that joy in life. And that's why I love to laugh and have fun. And that's the part of being magnetic, is because I just love to laugh. I'm like the biggest kid you will ever meet. Even with jobs, like I talked about earlier, in that whole, I can't work under these conditions. And that's probably, like I said, my condition is because if it's not fun, I won't do it. I'd be like, no, I can't do this. And they're like, okay, Sharifah, grow up, become an adult. Everything is not going to be fun. I'm like, in my world, everything's fun.
I don't want to grow up. That's actually, you and I are so similar in that way, that I think for me also, it's about fun and enjoyment. Because it's like, I realize you only have so much time on this earth, and like, what are you here for, right? Like, why are we here? And I feel like I'm here to experience things. And I feel like when I was afraid to do anything. And so one of the things that I had to do to actually get going on this was stop living in fear in general. And like, I started saying yes to things, like just anything that I would be afraid of, like, yes, yes, yes. And I did some really crazy things, like a zip lined, which I never thought I would do.
I won't do that. Okay.
Oh, it was terrifying, but it was also freeing, because nothing happened at the end. And you know how you were saying that you tell people, you're like, I'll get to you on Monday. I'm just getting to, not right now, just I'll get to it Monday. We, in our minds, when we say that, we think, oh my God, the world's going to explode. Everything's awful. But then Monday comes and everything's fine. Right. And I think the more we do those kinds of things, the more we have practice of doing the thing and the world not exploding, I think the easier it got. Like, it definitely helped to build my confidence a little bit.
Right. But then also, specifically, people who deal with anxiety and depression, a lot of that anxiety and depression is caused by the fears of what we think might happen, the fears of what could happen. If I tell this client no, then I'm not going to get the money, and then this thing could happen. And usually, 9 times out of 10, that thing that we fear doesn't happen. But because we have stopped, because we have relaxed, we took a nap, and that's my cure all for everything, for my kids and everything in the world. It's like when things get, I'm like, oh, I need a nap. You
You
need a
know?
nap. You just running around. Oh, he needs a nap. Like that's cure all. Take you a nap. You wake up. The world is brighter. You know what I mean? That's my cure all. But so that it reduces that anxiety.
Absolutely. Oh my God. I remember when I was younger, one of the things that I actually talk about this in my trainings. I say that the way that we get when we're so anxious is
Mhm.
like me when I think I was maybe 6 years old. And I remember this vividly, like it was yesterday. I'm 6 years old. I'm screaming at the top of my lungs. I'm like, mom's like, you're tired. You need, I don't, I'm fine. I want to play.
Right.
And I had just gotten so worked up and I was so
Right.
anxious. I'm like, I can't. And then the next thing I remember, I was waking up. Okay.
And
That's
you were fine.
I was fine. And I think you hit the nail right on the head. In business, we work ourselves up into this frenzy and we don't even realize it because there's nobody around who's
Right.
going to tell you, dude, you're having a tantrum in Target. Just take a nap.
Right.
You'll feel so much
Right.
better when you're done.
Right. That's my cure all. That's my cure all. It wasn't even about business, but I was having this same conversation with a friend of mine the other day. And he called me and he wanted to talk and he was telling me that he was depressed. And I told him, I said, okay, but you've been in a little room by yourself, talking to yourself, having a conversation with yourself, asking yourself these questions, and just get out of the house, go out into nature. I love comedy, stand-up comedy. I always put I used to put on comedy shows. My brand is Laughter Heals because I truly believe that from the core of my being that laughter heals. You just
Mhm.
laugh, go out, have a good time. But as long as you continue to stay in that mode, whether it's business or personal, you're going to stay stuck in that energy and you need something to shift that energy. So I always advise people, even with business, when I'm stuck on an idea and I can't figure it out, maybe it's a problem, a financial issue. It could be as simple as how do I get more clients? I always stop. Let me go do something that's enjoyable and then I'll come back to it. And all of a sudden the ideas just flow. They just come to me. That's pretty much my process. What is your process?
Dude, that is so for me, it's also like very similar. Get out, do something different.
Yeah.
The number one thing that I recommend to my clients is do something else that is not working.
Right.
Is so for example, like if you're on social media. So one of the things that I say is like you were talking about earlier, how she said she was having trouble connecting with people on social media. And a lot of the times, the reasons why people don't have trouble with it is because they're stuck in the box in the house, talking to themselves, doing nothing. And like they feel like they're boring because they have nothing to say. And I'm like, dude, you're not boring. You're bored. So you
Right.
need to get out of the house and do anything new. Try a new food, read a new book. It doesn't matter what, it literally doesn't matter. Just do
Right.
anything new and share about that. That in and of itself, when you're trying something new, it generates all of those feel good hormones that then translate through the posts that you're making. And then people want to read what you have to say versus you sitting here trying to be like, okay, I got to think of something. I got to think of something. And it's like, dude, you're not going to force it out. Like
Right. Right.
whatever happens, it's not
Not
going to be fun.
constipation, right?
I know that's how I describe it. I'm like, this is like you're constipated trying to get this idea out. It's not going to
Right.
happen.
Right. But one of the excellent point, but one of the things that I always tell people is just that they come to me and they say, Sharif, I need assistance with social media or marketing. And I'm like, okay, well, they say, I can't talk on social media. I said, you have absolutely nothing to say on social media. They go, no, I don't know how to say anything that's interesting. And I said, okay, so this is what I'm hearing. I love to do that counselor and feed it back to them because what I'm hearing you say is, correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm hearing you say is you don't find anything interesting about your business. Like there's nothing interesting about your business
Yeah.
because I don't know how, if you don't find your business interesting, how you expect other people to find your business interesting. I always advise that they step away from the trying to, like exactly what you said, trying to find it interesting and then just go do your business and then take photos and make comments about what you're doing that you found interesting during the course of your day. You know what I mean? Because if
Mhm.
you're a chef and you enjoy cooking, then maybe, just maybe, some people might be interested in the photos that of the food that you cooked. But if you're not interested, how do you expect them to be interested?
Exactly. And I think also people overthink it a lot. Like they overthink what interesting is, they overthink what they need to do. And usually that's where the problem comes in. The people who do the best on social media are the ones who really don't think that long or that hard about it. It's just you kind of
Right,
just do what's coming, like, oh, I'm thinking of this and I'm gonna write it, I'm gonna write it out. And that's sort of where some of this hustle proofing your life stuff actually even comes from. It comes from building that confidence you were talking about and really re-examining some of these things. Because when you and I were probably, let's say, if you look like back 5 or 6 years, the kind of training that we would get or we would have gotten for business education would have been very rigid, very specific, but not at all helpful to
right,
the world that we're living in today. And I think the fact that we're trying to force the square peg in the round hole is what creates all of this hustle for us because we feel like things are supposed to be a certain way. And
right.
I think for people like you and I and other business owners like us, we realized a lot, like a long time ago or recently, that whatever it was that we learned, some of it's good, some of it's junk. We have to sort of like eliminate a lot of that stuff because one of the biggest ones, for example, is business and personal need to be kept separate, right? So if your business isn't interesting and you're not willing to talk about your personal life, then you've really got nothing left. There's really
Right,
nothing to do. Whereas in the new world that we all live in now in the 21st century, you have to combine those two things together. And that's a whole different way of thinking.
right.
And I think that it's really hard to let go of your belief system. I think
Yeah.
that's really a lot of the things. And I think that for, like you were talking about that person before and the person on Zoom and struggles that you and I probably went through too, I think it really comes from discarding the preconceived notions about what you think is supposed to work in business. Cause I think we both found that none of that stuff works. It's
Right.
all different things now.
Yes, it hasn't worked for me. I can tell you that. But I believe, and I've seen this over 25 years, that it simply comes down to the fear of social media, the fear of the internet, the fear of taking that step. Because early on, especially as a business consultant, I remember back in the days when Yahoo Instant Messenger and AOL Instant Messenger and all these things were huge. I would have clients who just want me to be there as they install this instant message program. And I'm literally sitting there going, click next.
Yeah.
Click next. Click next. Okay. They don't want to take that step. And that's why I always say, ask Sharifah, do not face the unknown alone. But they don't want to take these steps. And when I work with them, I also find that even though you give them the information, you tell them just talk about what you find interesting, they still have a difficulty with posting on social media because there's this fear of, okay, well, if I say I love my, this cake I just baked, then people might think that I'm arrogant or I'm talking about myself. But we always think about what other people might say about what we're posting or what we're doing on social media. And I always remind people that you will never please all of the people all of the time. But what you will find is you will find your tribe. And so that's one reason I'm so confident about social media because I'm like Drake. I don't know if you heard the song, but his song, No New Friends, right? I'll tell people, I'm like Drake, no new friends. Most of my friends, my network, my tribe, they know Sharifah. They know there's no predictability. I might say anything on social media, but they tend to expect the unexpected from me. Have you seen that experience as well?
Absolutely, absolutely. I found that you've got to let go of caring about what people think about you and just own the fact that people are going to hate you. They just are. And some people are going to love you. And but you can't have one without the other, right? You can't have
Right,
somebody being like, "Oh my god, I love Duran Duran so much," without somebody saying Duran Duran sucks. Like
right,
you have to have both sides of the coin. And I think most people want to be liked by everyone. And my thought
yes,
is, well, in that case, you need to be coffee ice cream because that's the only
right.
way you're going to do that. Like,
Cookies and cream.
I found that when I really started to, the more I lean into this, because like I feel like over the last 3 years, I've slowly grown into this person now
Mhm.
that you see before you. But I want to actually pull my pictures over the last 2 years, like to show this. It was very slow evolution.
Right,
Because it was bit by bit me being willing to just sort of like let go and talk about the things that really mattered to me. And I found that here's what I found. What I found is that after I let go of the fear of judgment, right? Of the things, because like, all the things that are really important to me, I found that most of my audience was already those people who were into that kind of thing. And I
Right.
discovered that I was making it harder for people to find me by disguising myself to look like everybody else. I
Right.
need people to be able to find me, and for that I need to swear on lives. I need to be fully my authentic self. So it took me a while to kind of dive into it, but I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think that once you just let go of the fear and you're just like, it doesn't matter to me if you like me. It doesn't matter to me if you don't like me. What I have to offer is more important than whether or not you like me. So I'm just going to offer it. And then whoever wants to can take it. And whoever doesn't want to, I hope you find someone who can offer you what you're looking for, right? Like go bless and be an
Right.
elect.
Yes, I love it. I learned to say I love you, but I love you from a distance. Go open the door, but it's freeing. The other thing that I found freeing is that I used to be, like I tell people, I'm a recovering perfectionist, especially with doing my shows. If that show wasn't perfect, I didn't ask the right questions, or it would drive me crazy. It would drive me nuts, and I would basically, to a certain extent, lose sleep. You know what I mean? Not necessarily like I was going to sleep, but during that day, I keep revisiting it. Like, oh my God,
Mhm.
I said, I called Minessa Konecky, and I'm like, oh my God, I mentioned your name. You know what I mean? And I would go, but now I just kind of like, okay, you know what? Things happen, life goes on. I don't lose sleep over anything, especially after I got the numbers as far as the number of episodes that I do. You were on the show, and I don't know if I told you this, especially not on the show, but the gentleman that was on the show, who I felt was kind of, we were going at it a little bit, going back and forth, the guy who specialized in communication.
Mhm.
That was one of the most confrontational, if I can use that word, shows that I've ever done. And I say this with all humbleness, but most times I find something to agree with just about everyone. But this gentleman just kept cutting me off, and I felt like he kept cutting me off, and I'm like, wait a minute. But before, it would have bothered me a lot more. I would have said, you know what, that show had to be perfect, it had to be easy. Maybe I was cutting him off, or maybe I was disrespectful to him when I let him know that, excuse me, you didn't even allow me to introduce you. But it would have stayed with me a lot longer. Now I'm like, okay, it was a show. Some shows are wonderful, some shows are not, and I can move on a lot easier than I used to in the
Yeah.
past. Do you find that with what you're doing, that maybe there was a time where everything you mulled it over, you stewed on it, and now you're like, hey, it happens, life happened, my mic fell when I was doing the interview, and you go on? That would have totally threw me. Like if I lost internet connection, I would have probably went in my bed and went to sleep and cried. Now I'm like, okay, I'm back. Hey, let's keep going.
Oh my gosh. I was such a perfectionist that everything had to be perfect and perfect and perfect. I literally just, you know how it is. I mean, recovering
Yeah.
perfectionists, we know what it's like. It just, you cripple yourself with your perfectionism, and it's hard to get started because everything has to be perfect. And I realized, I think there were two things that happened. One, experience.
Right.
Experience definitely helped. Like you said, getting more shows in, at a certain point, your shows speak for themselves, like, and you just develop your own sense of confidence. But I think the other thing was that I realized that while I was sitting here feeling sorry for myself, or like, I don't really say feeling sorry, but I did feel sorry for myself when things didn't go right, or I ruminated on it, and then I'd lose like 2 hours on oh my God, I can't believe I said that.
Right.
Um, and I realized that while I was in this space, there were people out there that could use the information that I have, and they don't give a shit that I just did something stupid. And
Right.
I actually started to feel really self-centered, and almost like, I'm like, get over yourself, Minessa. It's fine. Right. And so I came at it. I don't usually come at myself from that perspective. I'm very gentle with me. But in this particular aspect, I was just like, oh, get over it. Like, it's fine. Like, you have so many things you can do, and you're choosing to be fixated on this one thing that honestly, in 3 days, you're not even going to remember.
Right.
So I did something. I can't remember who taught me this, but somebody taught me this at some point 5 or 6 years ago, that when I'm feeling bad, just go do something for somebody else. And
Oh.
so anytime I started to feel that, I would just go and say, who can I be of service to? And I would
Right.
just find anybody and just go do something for that person online, whoever that person is. And that helped to like redirect me a little bit to where I felt more confident. But now one of the things that I tell everybody to do, and I don't know that anybody really listens, because I think you'll agree that it takes time to get to that level of confidence, is just start it the day you decide to do something. Just start doing it.
Right.
and see what happens. And, oh, I made a mistake here. And, oh, I don't like where my camera is. And, like just change it as you go. So my Stop Shooting All Over Yourself podcast that I have, I started it just by me going live in front of the camera. And if you look at all of the episodes, you can actually see how it evolved. There's one where I'm actually sitting on like a Golden Girls type really horrible couch in Yarmouth. It's, oh my God, it's disgusting. But you can see the development, and I look terrible because I'm not like, I haven't showered. Like, it was a really bad week that week. But it's
Right.
like, you know what? Every week is a different week, and the information is what's important. And I think that's the key for a lot of us, is that the information is more important than how somebody is going to feel about you because of it.
Yes, but I also think that the most important thing is the testimony, and you can't have a testimony without a test. So many new podcasters ask me questions, and then they see Sharifah after 1,500 episodes. You know what I mean? They see that person who has gone through it. Like the first couple of the interviews, I was so nervous. I was so awkward, because I'm talking to like the CEOs of the largest companies in the world, and I'm like, trying to ask them questions, and they're like, little girl, what are you talking about? But now I've learned what questions to ask. I've learned what questions not to ask, but you learn. And so if I didn't have those experiences, I wouldn't be able to talk to new podcasters or even podcasters who've been on for some time and help them. Because I'm like, you know what? I've been there. I've gone through that. I've had that experience. I had to learn. I had to learn about my lighting. I remember some of my shows where my green screen kept showing through, like it was like I'm moving my hands, you can see green around my head, and I'm like, what is wrong? I had to call a professional, and they were like, Sharifah, it's your lighting, and I'm like, okay, let me fix the lighting. If you look at some of my shows, you would be like, what is this child doing?
Well, now I have to go back and watch the older ones. I want to see them.
You don't have that kind of time, Minessa. You're important. You're important. You don't have that kind of time. But I'm telling you, you learn. My earlier shows, I'm like, oh my God, like I'm so embarrassed. But I love it because it shows a progression. And that's really what you want to help people. That's, to me, is the inspiration in helping people, is to, like you said, exactly what you just said, is the progression. Because we always think a person is an overnight success. And there's no one in the world who is an overnight success. I forgot who said it, so I apologize for not giving credit where credit is due. But they said, yes, they're an overnight success, 25 years in the making.
I know, right?
That's how I feel.
Absolutely. I feel like somebody's going to find me. So I have a PR. So I'm at a stage of my business now where I'm hiring a PR person next year to kind of get my voice out there, because my goal is to actually amplify other voices. But first my voice needs to get out there. Right. So, oh my goodness, my brain fog just completely hit me. And as I was talking,
we went in a different direction, because we were talking about your PR rep, getting out there, amplifying your voice, helping the other people.
We're gonna, you know what? I was talking, and literally, it just, has that ever happened to you where it just like goes away? Oh my God! Okay, literally, my brain is empty. We'll let's hit back on something else, and if it comes back, we'll go with it.
No, it will come back. It just may not come back before we end this show, because I relate to that all the time. But you know what? I consider myself, people tell me, clairvoyant channels, medium, all that stuff. But it's the information is coming in. And then when you go in a different direction, then you lose it. That's why whenever all my friends are woo-woo and psychics and mediums, and that's why I never interrupt, because they'll be in a zone and they'll be talking and all this information. And I'd be like, well, what did you think I'm going to happen? And then all of a sudden they're distracted and all the message was gone. So it'll come back. It's probably going to come back about 3:00 in the morning.
I'll send you a message. Be like, Sharifah, I remembered what it was. I was talking about amplifying voices. That's what I remember.
But you have to amplify your voice by getting a PR representative.
I am amplifying my voice, but so I can amplify other voices. But there was something specifically that I was trying to say about that, and then I interrupted myself and confused myself. So I don't know if that's happened on your show before, but congratulations, it's happened now.
Usually I confuse people. I'm starting talking, you know what I mean? I'm always interrupting people. And it's funny because it's a joke, especially a friend of mine and I use it on the show sometimes. I'll go, I don't mean to interrupt, but that's what I do. And I just keep doing it. I don't mean to interrupt you, Minessa, but let's talk about me. I have a friend the song. I'll send it to you I'm gonna send it to you. Have you ever heard Toby Keith's Let's Talk About Me?
I have not, but now I want to hear it.
I'm gonna send it to you. But my friend sent this to me. We were talking for years, but she was like, "You just remind me of Toby Keith, and I want to talk about me." Because the whole lyrics of this song is, "We talk about you, you, you. Let's talk about me." And because I'm always like, "Well, I don't mean to interrupt, Minessa. I know you were talking about you, but let's talk about me. Let's get back to me. Let's get talk about me." So when I get excited, it comes back to me. This has been wonderful. I've had so much fun. This
Oh my
wasn't
God,
even
we're
like
done?
yes, we're done. It was a 30-minute interview. I
It
think,
was
I don't know,
amazing.
but we're like an hour right now. And you and we can talk all day. So at some point, I got to end it
You're
because
right.
the
You're right. We do
people,
have to end it.
because we'll just talk offline. You know what I mean? That's how we do it. That's how we get around these time parameters. You know. But this has been so much fun. I've enjoyed it. I don't know how much we talked about business or specifically your business, but I do know that anyone who watches this show, they will learn something. They will take something away from this show, whether they do it subconsciously or consciously. It comes in through the osmosis because there was so much information that your mind, your spirit, your soul will get that you didn't even expect. But one of the things that I love to do at the end of every show is just simply allow my guests the opportunity to speak directly to the audience, to everyone who is watching this show live, as well as everyone who is watching it in the archives, and let them know what you want them to take away from your experience, from your appearance here today, Minessa.
You know what I think, we didn't talk directly about any of the things that I do, but it turns out okay because I think that what we really talked about today was the underlying belief systems and things that we think about as business owners that actually keep us locked in this state of hustle. So yes, there's a lot of things you can do, practically speaking, that are going to help you unhustle. But the truth is, most of it is going to be in here, and then the rest of it is just going to be practice that makes that actualizes that in your real life. Um, the thing I think that I would want you to take away the most is that don't just because somebody told you something was the way to do business at some point in your life doesn't mean that that's how business is actually done. And I think the longest period of time, so in my life, when I think about the businesses that I've run and the things that I've done, the longest time that in terms of making a change is the time between the realization that there is something wrong and the acceptance that I need to do something different. Once I accept that I need to do something different, something else, it takes 10 minutes to do the thing and get going. This takes the longest amount of time. So I think the thing that I would really love for you to leave with is, as you listen to any of Sharifah's shows, because you're guaranteed to learn something on all of them, or as you listen to any of my lives in the Stop Shitting All Over Yourself podcast, I want to encourage you to think about it in that way and challenge yourself about how can I make this work for me, and what thoughts can you challenge? Because just by doing that, you will find that you're saving more time, you're taking more joy in your business and your life on a day-to-day basis, and the entire process of running a business becomes way, way, way more enjoyable. If you want to learn more about that, you can find me at minessa.com. That's the link to my business page.
I love it. Minessa.com. Please go ahead and check it out. I want to thank you for being a guest on today's episode of Ask Sharifah Videocast and Podcast. I also want to thank everyone who tuned in to watch this show live, as well as everyone who is watching it in the archives. As always, I ask that you support our guests. Visit Minessa.com. Check out what she has going on. Check out her podcast. Reach out to her. Send her a message. And when you do, please let Minessa know Sharifah Hardy says hi. Now, if you're interested in being a guest on Ask Sharifah Videocast and Podcast, or how I can help your business, please visit my website at AskSharifah.com. Until the next time, everyone have a safe and a blessed day. Bye now.